So neither of them made it back to the boat. Then how did her little pink Apple Watch end up back on that sailboat? Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. He maintains his innocence and denies any wrongdoing. Before his arrest, Brian sent friends annotated maps and GPS screenshots showing a marked route. He marked the exact spot she fell, framing it as a guide for the search teams. Blaine Stevenson, a member of the boating community who knew the couple, recorded their phone conversation. Brian called him right after she vanished. He shared it with CNN, fearing how people might judge the details. He wanted to know if seasoned sailors would find his account of the events plausible. Brian's lawyer won't confirm the voice. To me, these physical inconsistencies in his story are glaring. You and I must look deeper beyond the behavior and toward the digital evidence that provides a much more precise answer. It is far more specific and offers a more definitive conclusion than any behavioral or navigational issue we've discussed. The photograph taken right by the swimming pool clearly shows Lynette wearing her Apple Watch at 4:30 p.m. on April 4th. Carly Ellsworth confirmed the watch was actively syncing with Lynette's iPhone through the Find My feature. He flatly denies causing her death, claiming he is still holding out hope that she will be found alive. The watch was connected because her daughter says she used that specific Apple function all the time. I inspected the Soulmate after she vanished. The boat, Brian claimed, was left completely empty and deserted all that night. Carly didn't describe the tracking as some passive background task, but as a tool her mother used constantly. She confirmed it was an active part of how Lynette handled her devices every single day. Then there is the charging habit. When the watch battery ran low, Lynette always took it back to the Soulmate. The boat was the charging hub. That is where the device returned whenever it needed power. Brian claims the boat was deserted all night, yet the watch was recovered from inside the cabin. Both statements cannot be true. We need a mechanism to explain this reasonably. Either someone carried the watch back to the ship, or it arrived there in a way no one has explained. The digital dimension of this case means that mechanism was likely captured automatically by the technology. Everything we are reviewing here comes directly from verified reports and confirmed investigative findings. This system was logging data in the background without anyone making a conscious decision to create a record. To understand why this is the most crucial forensic question in the case, we must understand how Apple's network operates. The boat's Starlink satellite internet connection turns a suspicious physical fact into a digital question that can be verified exactly. The Find My feature from Apple isn't something users only turn on when they want to share a location. It is a continuous real-time link between a paired Apple Watch and its corresponding iPhone. The watch communicates with the phone throughout the day as long as the linked iPhone has a connection. The system functions via cellular signal Wi-Fi or any available satellite internet in the area. That location and activity data is uploaded to iCloud servers with an exact forensic timestamp. The user is typically unaware. No buttons are pressed. The data flows because the system was designed that way. Apple Watch devices also generate an independent stream of the user's biometric and health data. 24 days without a body, no charges, and no resolution. The reason this case is stalled comes down to one single structural problem. This includes heart rate readings taken at regular intervals and movement logs from the built-in accelerometer. It tracks step counts, activity levels, fall detection, and even whether the watch is currently on a wrist. All of this is logged locally with a timestamp. When the iPhone connects, the data syncs. This creates a permanent external backup that is accessible to law enforcement through the proper legal process. Federal agencies conducting active criminal investigations can obtain those records from Apple with a warrant. You and I know Apple complies with these legal orders to help investigators resolve these cases. The forensic significance of that health data layer is critical as we piece together the timeline. If Lynette was wearing her Apple Watch during that night's events, the device was silently capturing data. That watch automatically recorded physiological data at regular intervals throughout those critical hours. Investigators seized the devices from the Soulmate and are now deep into analyzing the server logs. There is only one account of what happened on April 4th. Through 2 active criminal investigations, we have access to a data stream packed with precise timestamps. These logs tell us exactly what that device measured and when. We also monitor standard iPhone behavior. The first time an iPhone joins a network, the user must authenticate the connection manually. From that point on, whenever the phone is within range, it will reconnect to the signal automatically. No screen unlock, no user input, and no conscious choice required. The device simply finds the network. The system authenticates and the router logs the event. Device ID, timestamp, and connection data are recorded. That log entry is generated on the network side before the user even realizes a connection exists. On the Soulmate, the network was Starlink, the satellite broadband service from SpaceX confirmed on board. For sailors in the Bahamas working far from any cell towers, Starlink is the only internet. It runs continuously on a motorized vessel. That is how the couple remained connected to the world. And it comes from the only person who witnessed the events that night in the Sea of Abaco. This is the network every device on the Soulmate had previously joined, including Lynette's own iPhone. Her phone had connected to that specific Starlink terminal many times before, given she wore her watch. She brought her watch to the boat to charge, and the phone would have authenticated every time. Network credentials were saved, making recognition automatic. We need to understand the weight of this digital footprint. A couple like Brian and Lynette Hooker living on a 46-foot sailboat as their primary residence. They depend on that onboard technology as essential infrastructure in a way most people simply do not. Their Starlink terminal is not a luxury. It is their phone provider, their TV, and their internet. It is their backup navigation, their emergency system, and their daily connection to their family. Their Apple devices authenticate with it multiple times a day because that boat is their home network. The digital log generated by those systems is not accidental. It is a continuous record of life aboard. Brian Hooker gave his statement to investigators, then shared the same story with friends through texts and a recorded phone call on April 7th. The Starlink was active. The Soulmate was at anchor. The night in question was April 4th. If Lynette's iPhone came within range of that terminal signal, it connected to the network automatically. The Starlink device logged the event. Apple's servers received everything synced during that specific connection. A timestamp was generated without anyone pressing a button or making any kind of conscious decision. Everything happened without anyone needing to know. This is not a theory, it is how systems work. You and I need to understand the mechanism here. Lynette's Apple Watch was tethered to her phone. Her phone was connected to the Soulmate Starlink. If either device returned to the boat, a connection occurred. A log was created, and that timestamp exists permanently independent of whatever story is being told. It stands independent of any testimony. Brian claims that neither of them ever went back to the vessel. The Starlink recorded the truth. On April 8th, Bahamian authorities took Brian Hooker into custody. Records obtained by the press show he and Lynette left the Hopetown area in an 8-foot rigid hull inflatable boat at approximately 7:30 p.m. Investigators executed a search warrant on the Soulmate. My sources at CBS News reviewed that warrant. The items authorized for seizure included digital video recorder tablets and various phone accessories. According to the filing, those objects are material evidence related to a missing person who has been harmed. We are not looking at an accident or a simple disappearance. This is a forced disappearance. Physical harm. A judge agreed there was probable cause, so agents legally boarded the Soulmate. They confiscated digital equipment believed to prove that Lynette Hooker suffered some form of physical injury. The Detroit News confirmed that electronic devices were seized through the cooperation of Bahamian authorities. Those devices are now in the hands of investigators across 2 separate criminal inquiries. There is the Royal Bahamas Police Force investigation opened since April 5th and the Coast Guard's case. The United States Coast Guard formally opened its own criminal investigation on April 9th. Their destination was the Soulmate, their 46-foot sailboat anchored just off Elbow Cay. This is not a search and rescue mission or an accident review. They have opened a criminal investigation. Under federal maritime law, we have clear jurisdiction over any United States citizen involved in a major incident at sea. Opening a formal criminal investigation means my colleagues in the Coast Guard are coordinating directly with federal authorities. We now have the power to subpoena tech giants for device data and account logs linked to our investigation. The Coast Guard Investigative Service serves as our primary law enforcement arm within the United States Coast Guard. We handle federal maritime crimes, specifically those involving fatalities or critical injuries occurring on the open water. Every criminal case file we build is strictly coordinated with the Department of Justice and federal prosecutors. Our investigative toolkit includes the same high-level digital forensics capabilities that you would see at the FBI. By opening our own case separate from the Bahamas, we have ensured this investigation follows 2 distinct legal paths. These are 2 independent agencies, both with the power to seize the digital evidence that could break this case. A vessel they had intentionally named after buying it in Texas and sailing it down to the Caribbean. Assistant Commissioner Ed Dams confirmed that Brian was brought back into custody for a round of intense questioning. There was enough evidence for us to formally label him as a primary suspect in his wife's mysterious disappearance. During those 5 days in a cell, our team grilled him on charges of causing injuries resulting in death. His defense attorney eventually confirmed these details during an interview with Fox News Digital. He was released on April 13th after the prosecution reviewed our file and advised against filing any immediate criminal charges. We are still waiting on new leads. Reports from Elbow Cay confirm that our investigation remains active and ongoing. Surveillance photos from that night show Brian walking toward the dock alone, carrying a distinctive yellow dry bag. That bag has become a central piece of our puzzle, though we still do not know its true contents. The exact timestamp on that photograph is a detail we consider highly significant to our criminal investigation. After his release, Brian left the island for the States, citing his mother's failing health as the primary reason. If Lynette's Apple Watch was paired to her iPhone, her daughter Carly Ellsworth told me she was always finding her mother's phone. According to his account, conditions deteriorated during the trip. 20-knot winds, choppy water, and that is when Lynette fell overboard. He went on national television swearing he would never harm his wife and promising to continue the search. He told CBS that he believes people have survived for days after falling overboard in these Bahamian waters. He confessed to ABC that his one job was protecting her and he plans to keep doing that. Commissioner Shanta Knowles confirmed that Brian is still a suspect in our investigation. We have also taken note of the strong reaction from the local boating community regarding these tragic events. Blaine Stevenson, a fellow sailor, came forward with a recorded phone call that Brian had placed to him. He wanted other experienced mariners to listen and judge whether Brian's story of the accident actually made sense. When a close friend goes public with a private recording, you know this case has hit a breaking point. It highlights the massive gap between Brian's claims and how an experienced sailor and the ocean actually behave. For strictly legal reasons, we have not yet released the data pulled from the seized digital devices. He says she basically bounced against the boat when a sudden 20-knot gust of wind hit them. Making digital evidence public before charges are filed would jeopardize the integrity of our entire investigation. Our silence is just standard procedure, not a sign that we haven't found something significant in the data. If you and I are on the same page about following the digital trail, stick with me for more. We follow the evidence wherever it leads. Even former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer weighed in on our progress. She noted that prosecuting a case without a body presents a massive structural challenge for any legal team. Without finding her remains, we simply do not have a strong enough case to secure an immediate conviction. We simply cannot determine the exact cause of death or find forensic proof of foul play without a body. Defense attorneys are counting on this. Without a body, proving intentional harm becomes incredibly difficult for us. But Coffindaffer was blunt. She said we need to prioritize a deep dive into his recent Google searches. If he made any incriminating searches online, that will be the digital smoking gun we need to close this. And then everything failed. From our perspective, gaining access to his digital footprint is now our absolute top priority. We are hoping these tech platforms cooperate, considering we have 2 active criminal investigations currently underway. She was pointing to a cold, hard pattern we see time and again in modern missing persons cases. We are looking for searches about tide patterns, localized water behavior, and survival windows in the open sea. We also look for research on how outboard motors function when the emergency kill switch is bypassed. All that data from the planning stage creates a permanent time-stamped record on a server that nobody can erase. Digital evidence of this nature doesn't require a physical body to remain valid in court. You can't cross-examine a log of digital connections, it just exists. Search histories don't change their timestamps once a disappearance hits the headlines. They're frozen. A device's authentication log isn't fooled by bad weather or poor lighting, it's objective. In his own words from that recorded call, she simply bounced against the boat during a sudden gust. He told investigators that Lynette was wearing the engine safety lanyard. These records are permanent stored off-device on platforms that answer to a federal subpoena. 2 active federal investigations across 2 jurisdictions have the legal muscle to seize every bit. When the only eyewitness is also our prime suspect, the digital trail becomes our vital evidence. Automated logs aren't just supplementary. In my experience, they're the most reliable proof we have. Coffindaffer flagged Brian's Google searches. Banfield focused on the Starlink logs aboard the vessel Soulmate. The investigative principle is identical here. The technology simply created a record without human bias. You and I are looking at 2 criminal case files to see if those logs confirm Brian's story. Banfield didn't investigate from a distance. She spent 5 days on the ground in Elbow Cay. She met with Carly Ellsworth, verifying the Starlink and Find My data at 4:30 p.m. She reviewed photos of Lynette wearing that watch, placing the device directly on the Soulmate. That is the cord designed to kill the engine if the operator falls in. So, when she hit the water, the motor died. She secured an exclusive with Darlene Hamlet and tracked down Rachel Shaw, Lynette's close friend. She questioned the Abaco Inn bartender and scrutinized photos of Brian carrying that yellow dry bag. She consulted a retired Coast Guard captain to test the physical reality of Brian's water crossing. Based on that verified intelligence from our sources, she reached one inescapable conclusion. If Lynette's iPhone or watch pinged the signal after Brian claimed she had already vanished, the connection was automatic and it logged every move. She stated that clearly on the record. If Lynette's tech returned to the Soulmate, it's game over. That's a cold, hard fact. She isn't guessing the log's contents. She's applying logical forensic inference to the established facts. Looking at the pairing and the Starlink system, we know that digital handshake happened automatically. The record was made. If it places Lynette's phone near the boat after the critical window. He claims the current pulled them apart almost instantly. No eyewitness refutes her theory. Only an automated machine record can truly contradict the suspect. A digital log doesn't care about the outcome. When we say game over, the account is finally closed. Let's be clear, it's about the account closing. Brian hasn't been charged with any crime. His lawyer, Terrell Butler, remains adamant that his client categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. He flatly denies killing her, keeps asking for her, and claims he still hopes she'll appear. He told NBC News he'd never harm his wife. Did the police ever ask him that? Of course, his reply. He said he never hurt Lynette and never would do such a thing. He says he just wants to find her. He stuck to that script from day one. Lynette Hooker's family has provided the human context for this tragedy since the morning of April 5th. Their statements are documented, sourced, and consistent. Carly Ellsworth took a call on a Sunday night. In texts shared with the media, he told a friend that she swam toward the sailboat, but they lost sight of each other immediately. It was between 8 and 8:30 p.m. Brian spoke in a strange monotone voice. He told her his mother was missing since the night before. He said they'd visit soon. The line went dead. She told CNN it felt like he dropped a bombshell. She keeps asking the same question. How do you just lose my mother? It makes no sense. She's been extremely specific about the history of this relationship and what it reveals to us. She told Fox News there's a documented pattern of Brian choking and threatening Lynette, specifically threats to toss her overboard. They discussed a separation just before they were last together. He allegedly choked her and threatened to dump her in the ocean. Now this is happening. This is all coming to a head 2 years later. She finds Brian's version impossible to believe. Her mother was a seasoned sailor with a decade of experience and she was a strong swimmer. He claims total darkness fell within 10 minutes. He then rowed with a single oar across the Sea of Abaco for nearly 7 hours before drifting into Marsh Harbor shipyard around 4 a.m. on April 5th. She grew up near lakes and was an expert. You don't just fall off a vessel you've sailed for years. She challenged his narrative. She shared the voicemail. Just as Brian left the Bahamas, I watched Carly arrive by plane. Uniformed officers met her at the gate. She retraced her movements from April 4th. Then she posted to her GoFundMe. I have reconstructed their movements from that day. You and I can see why the timeline feels suspicious. She recovered several of Lynette's belongings. That L initial necklace her mother always wore and a simple headband. She carried a handmade photo frame and a gift from her grandmother back home to Massachusetts. She claims she is returning to the Bahamas to keep searching. Meanwhile, Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, sat for an interview. That exclusive sit-down revealed details about her daughter's disappearance that the public had never heard before. Lynette bought a one-way ticket home a month before vanishing. My notes suggest she was finally planning to leave Brian. The cycle repeated every 18 months to 2 years. She would return home for 3 weeks at a time. He told someone at the shipyard that his wife had gone missing. Hamlet told the reporter she had been bracing herself for a call like this for a very long time. She had been researching various resources, trying to find a way to get Lynette out of that relationship safely. She described Brian as cruel and violent when he drank, but when they were happy, they were truly happy together. My daughter had many ups and downs with her husband. It was a relationship of extremes, both good and bad. When things were good, they were great. When things went south, it was a total nightmare. The dark times were brutal. I discovered that Lynette used to take photographs of her own injuries. She kept those photos as a reminder never to go back. Yet in the end, she returned to him anyway. One of Lynette's closest confidants, Rachel Shaw, also gave an exclusive interview for this investigative report. As someone who knew her personally, her testimony helps us paint a clearer picture of who Lynette really was. This interview was part of my larger effort to understand the full complexity of the Hookers' toxic relationship. That individual called the police. The search began immediately. We cannot rely solely on the word of the only man left standing on the water that night. Text messages Lynette sent to a friend in January 2024 have finally surfaced in the media. The logs prove they were separated then. She wrote that she was done and was never going back. By late February 2024, texts to that same friend confirmed they had unfortunately reconciled. That one-way ticket purchased just weeks before April 4th was never used. It remains silent evidence. In 2015, both Brian and Lynette were flagged for a domestic violence incident in Michigan. Both claimed assault. Lynette was arrested. My report shows Brian had a bloody nose that day. He claimed she struck him repeatedly. She claimed she was hit too. The prosecutor declined the case. Evidence was insufficient to name the primary aggressor. Brian Hooker was never charged for that incident. None of this history proves what happened, but you and I can see the context it provides. For the last 24 days, we have had only one witness statement to help us locate Lynette Hooker. The most critical part of his story, the detail our entire investigation hinges on, is this. Neither Brian nor Lynette returned to the Soulmate that night. We are weighing every digital and physical clue, including the Starlink terminal logs from the night she vanished. There is a legal reality we must address. In cases with no physical remains, defense lawyers have a structural edge. No body means no confirmed cause of death. Without that, there is often no basis for an indictment. Brian's lawyer raised this point. If you haven't found the person, how can you claim harm was done? But the evidence in a 2026 maritime probe is different, all thanks to modern technology. Apple Watch data, Find My iPhone pings, and Starlink connections are massive game changers for this investigation. The ocean might have taken the physical remains, but the digital data tells a much darker story. Location logs and Apple Watch biometric data had not been fully gathered until we stepped in. The Starlink logs and Brian's device search history are exactly where I'm going to build this case. A connection timestamp does not need a body to be admissible in a court of law. The sailboat was their destination. She went in before they arrived. He rowed the other way. An authentication log does not require a confession to make perfect sense to a jury. Apple servers, Starlink records, and search history platforms all answer to our criminal subpoenas. With 2 federal investigations now ongoing, we have the legal muscle to reach every piece of data. In modern cases, we don't just wait for a suspect's story to crumble during an interrogation. First, we weigh their words against the automated logs pulled from their own digital devices. Digital evidence is far more objective than testimony. It is permanent in a way that human memory is not. In her Newsweek interview, Coffin Daffer pointed directly to the device data. She knows that when a case relies on just one eyewitness, and that witness is also the prime suspect, we have to find evidence that doesn't rely on anyone's testimony to exist. The Starlink logs the Find My iPhone trails, the Apple Watch health sync, and the search history on every seized device. None of those digital footprints asked Brian Hooker for permission. They were generated automatically by the systems themselves. The Soulmate remained anchored and completely empty throughout the entire night, stored on remote servers and are now sitting in our evidence locker, where we have the full legal authority to dissect them. One of 2 possible realities is already documented in those files. Either Lynette's devices returned to that boat and the Starlink log proves it, or they never made it back at all. And that lack of connection destroys Brian's story in the one dimension where we can verify the truth with precision. As investigators, we already know which of those 2 versions of reality we're dealing with. The rest of this case hinges on how we use that information and when we decide to move. Think about what it would mean for us if those Starlink logs show her phone active after the moment Brian says she was gone. Every statement he's given, every interview, and every marked map he sent to his friends. All of it would be re-examined against a timestamp that doesn't care about his narrative. What do you think the future holds here? Give me your thoughts in the comments. In that version of events, nothing Lynette had on her should have ended up on the Soulmate. Not her phone, her watch, or anything else. This conversation is happening across every platform, and your perspective as an observer is a vital part of the investigation. 24 days, 2 active criminal probes, and a watch recovered from a boat where no one should have been. An iPhone that would have linked to that boat's satellite internet automatically if it had been anywhere within range. Under a warrant noting that the Soulmate Starlink terminal silently logged every device that authenticated with it on the night of April 4th. Lynette Hooker still hasn't been found. Her daughter flew to the Bahamas, was met by police, and boarded the Soulmate. She recovered the L necklace her mother always wore. A mother who's been waiting for justice since the morning her phone first rang. The technology was there on that boat on the night of April 4th. It recorded everything automatically and permanently without asking anyone for permission. Subscribe because this case is far from over. New developments are on the horizon. When the truth breaks, this is exactly where you'll want to be. Our analysis of the Apple Watch and Starlink connectivity reflects how those systems work and the theories from Ashley Banfield. It should have gone wherever Lynette went into the current, into the dark, not back to the boat. This is built on her boots-on-the-ground reporting, but it does not represent official findings confirmed by law enforcement yet. If you want to follow this case as it unfolds, subscribe and drop your theory in the comments. What do you think happened on the night of April 4th? Hit the like button if this breakdown helped you see the case differently. This is where the physical evidence presents its own navigational problems, separate from the digital trail we are tracking. Their destination was the Soulmate when Lynette allegedly went overboard. That means the boat was right in front of them, a fixed object at a known coordinate. Brian told his friend that Lynette actually swam toward the sailboat after falling in, meaning she was in the water, actively moving toward that target. He was in an unpowered dinghy right near that same fixed location. And yet the inflatable boat ended up 4 miles away at the Marsh Harbor shipyard. The 55-year-old woman from Onstead, Michigan vanished the night of April 4th near Elbow Cay in the Bahamas. Our only lead is the story provided by her husband, Brian. A retired United States Coast Guard captain who analyzed the case found serious problems reconciling that description of the navigation